Can you believe it? They actually released the Herobrine files, and so much has been discovered about Java, as well as internal Mojang stuff, but today I want to focus mostly on what exactly it is that is interesting if you're a console player, the things we've never seen, like this prototype tutorial world, or indeed this debug menu we were definitely never even meant to see, as well as the end sounds that have seemingly been found, and also the capes that have been found in the files. This is on top of the fact that people have been trying to turn this into a viable multiplayer project to be continued. This is absolutely wild, and so hello, I'm AbyaX3Cat, and I've been making console videos since 2012. This video is going to come to you in 5 parts, and I want to start with a quick clarification that even though it was the PlayStation 3 files that leaked initially, they were actually poorly cropped out, full Minecraft console files, but people actually did upload the full console source files, including all of the additions, and then later, someone uploaded a Minecraft Pocket Edition source file. As you would have known if you watched that full video, we are getting so much of a deep dive, and so there's much more to be discovered, but one of the first and most intriguing things, in my opinion, was the debug menu. So this is the first level of debug on Minecraft console. This is a standard thing that developers add to their game to allow them to test it quicker. You can see the ability to freeze time, disable weather, craft anything, or instant mine. These are handy, if kind of somewhat standard and maybe usable by players, but also the ability to press a button and go to the Nether, or go to the overworld, or even unlock all DLC. Super interesting, if you ask me, but even better than that is the fact that there is the ability to have a super flat Nether, something that console has exclusively. Java and Bedrock to this day in 2026 still do not have this, and it's funny that this 2014 source code just has it as a single button. But yeah, this debug menu has been seen before by YouTubers and apparently via hex code editing, but what has never been seen before is the much more advanced menu. So this is, give credit to Minecraft Digger for the footage of this here, this is the ability to set your camera position, perhaps for making trailers, and indeed the ability to spawn in mobs or create schematics that basically Minecraft had for internal use, the ability to do all sorts of mod-like things and to see all sorts of data that just wasn't visible to end players, and we kind of knew it, but being able to see it and even play with it is absolutely awesome. So I wanted to start with that because it's crazy, but in my opinion, the wildest things found in the files so far was a prototype tutorial world. This was actually extracted by DexRN, who has managed to put it out there for a Java download, which I've then promptly converted myself to Bedrock. Let's see exactly what's happening here. For those unaware, this is the tutorial world that came bundled with every version of Minecraft console. They updated it a lot over the years, but many people feel the most nostalgia for this, the original Title Update 1 version. Well, this is actually a recreation of the Title Update 1 version in my Let's Play world. I might have made a change or two, but there are a few notable features, that being the abandoned house here, that being the kind of big plains, which features a few tutorials about key things in the world, the big Minecraft sign, and then once you go beyond this little hole you spawn in, you'll find a full Minecraft village, despite villages not having been added to even Java at that point. Very interesting, but perhaps what is more interesting is looking at the prototype tutorial world and spotting just how much of it is familiar. Now, it's not just the abandoned house right at spawn, but also things like the glass house or the castle or the Minecraft logo floating in the sky, but it all looks kind of weirdly rearranged. In fact, I think this whole world looks wildly rearranged because it is very open world. You can immediately go off in any direction if you want to, which means that clearly at some point between this prototype and the full release, 4J Studios decided it'd be better to have a tutorial that actually handheld the player, because immediately after following this path, instead of getting to a point where it teaches you about something, the path just splits in two. You can go to the left and go into this new looking castle I don't think we've seen before, or you can go forwards, end up in a NPC village, although not the one from the final release, or even more forwards and into a bit of the world that is just kind of in the background of the original Title Update 1 tutorial. Many people might not even know that some of these builds exist, but this is one of those classic wheat barns. But again, it's got crops in theory being able to teach you about wheats and seeds, but kind of doing so without any real guidance and without any real feeling like the game is holding your hand. Indeed, this is a very intriguing tutorial because there is a minecart rail in here that maybe could have been there to teach you about minecarts, but going to the right won't tell you about anything. Instead, you hit this staircase and then some gravel. I don't know why there's gravel in the path. And then this little jut out to the right where you can just look out and see, oh, it's right at spawn, that same shipwreck Just like how the tutorial world actually had villagers before villagers were added even to Java, it had shipwrecks a good most of a decade before that came to any version of Minecraft. Isn't that fun? Anyway, speaking of things that are fun, if you do continue on this way, you'll see a very weird looking mill house, which I have to say is strange. Look at that. Why? What's the deal with that? And then you get to the same classic tutorial world, but with the Minecraft logo rotated to the left. It's still got its torches and it's still written the same way. Very intriguing, right? Anyway, you can see that the castle and everything else is basically the same. So what they basically did for this tutorial world is they just condensed it a bunch and seemingly made it all into one space. However, I haven't gone and looked yet as to why these extra buildings existed. And so, should we go inside right now? Let's see what this watermill house was designed to teach. Well, going inside, I guess it would teach you that fire doesn't spread if you have cobblestone. But otherwise, it looks pretty barren. Although, as we all know, it's very normal to live in attics, so maybe there's a bed up here. Nope, it's just a house designed to teach you that you can make yourself a grand build. And honestly, this is a really cool one. I mean, how can you not secretly want to make this in your own world? Or is that just me? Anyway, speaking of things that are just me, I kind of want to go and see what happens when we go on that minecart rail now, because really that feels like the biggest mystery in this tutorial. It's all of the existing tutorial assets moved around and made more open world, besides this one, which looks entirely unrecognizable. So, oh, there's no minecart. Am I going to walk it or not? Clearly I need a minecart, so let's get one in. Let's summon ourselves a minecart and let's go on a slightly slower than Legacy Console minecart journey. Ooh-wee, we are in a cave, learning that you can make roller coasters, and it just takes you to here? I see why this is a prototype. Looking around this cave, I think the 4J employees were trying to test if Herobrine was real, based on what I'm seeing here. Why is any of this here? This is clearly not something that they were considering releasing if it has this much out there. There is a lot of polish they would have needed to do, but also, why is this inside a castle if you don't get to see it? Is it just designed to teach you about minecarts, have you go on a journey and then come back? It feels that way. Anyway, because this is a wild file that you can access on Java and Bedrock, it means we can also go into our settings and switch ourselves into creative mode, which is going to be great. Let's see exactly what's... Oh, there's a waterfall! Okay, there is no... If they're real gamers, there's something hidden behind the waterfall. What is it? Well, I think we can be almost certain that this is a place they would have put a chest with a disc, right? So maybe that was like an earlier idea. But otherwise, you can see there's a castle right here, but not a castle that is even fully built. So very, very early iteration, maybe designed to be like a vertical slice of how tutorial could function. And otherwise, the Minecraft logo, it's got some obsidian around it, which is interesting, although not really that much. This is otherwise exactly what we expect, although there's a lot of chests here facing each other. I assume this is a conversion error. Wait, does this chest not have a front? Oh, there it is. I'm stupid. I'm just stupid. Yeah, this is a conversion error more than anything else. But it does show every single item seemingly that you could want, perhaps allowing you to test these items out for yourself. Or for developers to do exactly that too. It's hard to be clear. One of the other things we can do, because this is in a modern version of Bedrock, is we can use the latest graphics. That's right, vibrant visuals. We can experience a 2011 or 2012 Minecraft build, but with the graphics technology of 2026. And oh, isn't that beautiful? Isn't it just stunning? Do you think they ever realized when building this that at some point it would be viewed through these lenses? I like to believe so. I really do. Anyway, one of the most interesting discovery from all of this is not just that this world exists, although it really is a wild piece of lost content, but instead it's the fact that the world border exists at 512 by 512, meaning that maybe the console wasn't committed to its original world size of 864 by 864. Maybe that was a huge improvement that came later. If I'm being honest, I always assumed that they went for 1024 by 1024. You know, I always assumed they wanted to go for a nice round number, and it was just slightly too much for the console to push. And so it's really, really cool to see that they did have a smaller world size. They even made a full tutorial world in it. And then either backed out of it, or maybe it was going to be a world option always. Maybe in the same way that Xbox One has small classic and large world sizes, maybe you'd be able to have even smaller than the Xbox 360 classic sizes. This is a cool idea that I would have been fully on board with. But again, without actually getting official comment from 4J, it's very hard to do anything but speculate. Although I do have to say that even saying that this is a prototype tutorial world is technically doing exactly that. Why do I say this? Well, Minecraft did have quite a famous beta that did leak all the way back in 2013. Wow, 13 years ago now. Man, those beta leaked files are old enough to drink. Anyway, but the interesting thing is that Minecraft did have a beta leak from all the way back in the day, back before it even called itself Xbox 360 Edition. It just said Minecraft and was on the Xbox 360, and there were so many discrepancies with textures and things that had to be changed. But interestingly, despite that being true, you can still see that the tutorial world in this version of the game was our modern one and not this one. So either this was from really early in development, which is possible, it makes sense, it was one of the first things they built to show what you can do with console, or maybe this is something they would build just so they can show all sorts of different things off, and then someone later copy-pasted them to make the final tutorial world. Maybe this is just where they built a bunch of things, and the good-looking builds or the bad-looking builds, if we're being real, like this one right here, maybe could get scrapped, while the better-looking builds could stay in there. Although, if that was true, it doesn't explain why the lighthouse is inexplicably in the corner of the tutorial world. I mean, I'm no Minecraft Casanova, but I feel like there are better lighthouses out there than this. Anyway, though, let's go into the rest of the found console files, because some of them are actually quite strange, like the audio files for the PlayStation 3 edition did not perfectly match those for Java, with this being one of the most notable differences, the end dragon alive.binker. Sounds kind of normal now, but then... Combine this with the weird end dimension found in these files that seems to show an end that has towers like the old Java edition, but then terrain that looks dramatically like it's a desert, and all of a sudden we have some real questions, right? Although I think these can be answered quite simply. One of these is that this file is, even though it's not matching anything found on Java, it does match a song called C418, The End. That's right, this is just a C418 song, just one that wasn't used in its full here. Perhaps for file compression reasons, and interestingly, it seems as though this end is just an unrelated development feature, just like how there's a development version of the tutorial world, perhaps there's a development version of the end. I know that's not the most satisfying of answer, so would you like a satisfying answer? If so, take a look at this tweet that claims to have seen a never-before-seen Minecraft Xbox 360 Desert Well, and if you have ever played this version of the game, you might really enjoy this one, because no, even though this has 100,000 views, that's not actually true. This existed in the game, and according to the fact that I can find it here in my expanded Xbox One world, it existed until at least TU31, and so yeah, this is now old enough to be actively confusing to people, or maybe I guess there are Minecraft players young enough not to remember it. Isn't that fun? Speaking of things that are fun, did you know a separate project at the exact same time also managed to find some wild things? That is to say, the Xbox and the 4J Studios cape, as well as apparently the 1 millionth player cape. These were found, again, not by using the decompiled source code, but by actually doing that exactly themselves. I think this is fascinating by itself, but even more fascinating, in my opinion, is the fact that there have been people actively working to bring the files that we did have out there into a viable multiplayer project. I've seen multiple people doing this with one of the big project forks called LCEMP, basically saying, you know what, why don't we use this as a way to make like old school Minecraft? It's a weird port that most people have some familiarity with of a version of the game that even Java players have some nostalgia for. Wild thing to say, but I've just got to say right now, like, I wish them the best with this, but clearly this raises the next big question, which is what will Microsoft do about this? I mean, effectively, the source code for not just one of their games, but all of the Legacy Console Edition, as well as Pocket Edition, leaked on the same day, and the community is going crazy finding everything they can in there. This is something that feels like a bit of a disaster, given that they deliberately weren't releasing this code before, right? And although I'd love to start with a theory about how actually Notch is behind this. Instead, I just need to mention the fact that although this seems like it's really bad, and yes, this wasn't something they were intentionally going to do, I think that Microsoft basically has two choices now. One is to aggressively go after people to try to put this back in the box, if you will. This is something that risks having the Streisand effect, having more and more people know about this because Microsoft are against it, or the second solution, which is to basically say or do nothing. Indeed, this actually seems like a clever move because ultimately, you know, like, are most people going to care about this? It seems like a large number of console players do, and it seems like a large number of even non-console players are fascinated by being able to look into how the game was optimized for these platforms, but there's not a lot of trade secrets, there's not a lot of secret information that can really be gained from this. Instead, it seems like mostly something that really helps the community. In fact, I saw a decent thread from Irish Shaders. This is obviously someone who works on a Java mod, and although I want to read their thread to you first and then we'll comment on it afterwards, they say that they've been messing with the LCE PC port leak. It's been very cool and they've been porting some graphic stuff to it, but it's also completely useless other than for nostalgia value, and it's not better than Java, which he's heard some people legitimately say. Yes, they will fight us on this. It is better than Bedrock in some ways, but isn't a valid replacement for playing Bedrock on consoles these days either, and as cool as LCE's code is, it's clear that it's significantly more of a hard-coded mess than Bedrock ever was and wouldn't be maintainable for that long on so many different plot targets. And so, to make it as clear as possible, this is just a port of Java that contains hundreds of unused files that directly reference original Java code and the original Java structure. In other words, they think that the most interesting thing about this code is the kind of old look into Java, which is funny because that's the one version of Minecraft that didn't have its leak happen, and I think this is a powerful thread that really drives home the point, but also it is a couple of points on wrong here. First of all, the fact that saying that it's not better than Java, I mean, like, obviously Console Edition from 2014 is not better than Java 2026. No one is saying that unironically, but actually, in some ways, Legacy Console 2014 has features that both Bedrock and Java do not have. I mean, obviously Java is the easier version, say, like it doesn't have a tutorial world, it doesn't have controller support, it doesn't have the super flat never, or so many other weird little quirks here or there. This is something that is seriously worth considering, and also I would say that obviously it's not better than Bedrock right now, but maybe if it had had those years of development, it would be. But now we know the extent of this leak and the fact that it wasn't really directly massively harmful and so likely won't be taken down, it raises the question, was Notch behind this? I mean, who would have access to the source code, other than the creator themselves, and indeed, who also spends some time on 4chan? We know that that describes Notch. It is worth mentioning that Notch is aware of these leaks. He responded to my tweet showing the old tutorial world in vibrant visuals, so clearly he is someone who has at least followed this going out there, but is Notch behind it? There's no evidence to suggest that that is the case. I think that based on the 4chan thread having multiple users with access to this source code, clearly there are a lot of people who had access to this at some point, and now some of them have decided to share this anonymously. Was one of those people Notch? Is one of those kind of fun questions that you could ask yourself forever, but we don't have a definitive answer on, and I think that more likely than not, does it make sense for him to do so, is the question you should be asking yourself. But the final question that we should ask now, kind of going back into that Irish Shaders thread, but also the question that everyone has on their minds after seeing this nostalgia, was Legacy Console the better choice? Now that we know that they could have made it the cross-platform version, would Legacy Console have been a better Legacy than anything else? Well, 2014 Minecraft Console has features that 2026 Java and Bedrock do not. That should say everything, and so thank you for watching. No, I think that there is obviously a real trade-off to be had with how Java was ported to consoles. This is something really weird because Pocket Edition, as we know from the leaks, started being called Ninecraft and was deliberately built by compressing and by doing all sorts of crazy tricks to make sure that they could run the game on mobile, but it meant that they started on a whole new codebase, whereas what we're learning from the Minecraft console leaks is they basically wanted to, accurately and faithfully recreate the Java edition on consoles as closely as they could. This means that there is no major questions of parity between console and Java, besides where limitations dictate it, like with the world size, or besides where console goes above and beyond the Java, like with minigames or the tutorial world, and I think that this is something seriously worth considering, that Microsoft did come in there and decide, you know what, let's build the mobile version up, because that was the kind of way their company was going as a whole, trying to build as Windows Mobile at the same time as Windows, trying to make sure that the mobile experience in PC stayed as familiar and similar as possible. But if instead we had a Bedrock that was just ported Java, well, so many issues to do with parity, so many of the slight inefficiencies and features that have to go missing from one edition because they're not there in the other, so many of these wouldn't have had to happen. And so was Legacy Console the better choice? Well, with the benefit of hindsight, it feels easy to say yes, and using that same hindsight, it's hard to imagine where we would be with Legacy Console Edition and how many other fun ideas would have come to fruition. But also, it's possible that even in 2026, there wouldn't be Infinite Worlds and that people would be pining for that and wishing of the days that they just ported the Pocket Edition over to the consoles. Actually, that sounds crazy when I say that out loud. But with that said, I do think that Bedrock has gone through some major improvements recently, but it does, seeing all of these leaks does make me definitely a little nostalgic. No, I'm lying to you. It makes me a lot nostalgic. I mean, it's crazy that I can be nostalgic about features we never even got, like this console edition tutorial world, but I love seeing these sort of lost media features, and I love that people love the console edition so much that after all these years, we're still finding stuff like this. By the way, this tutorial world was definitely worse. I mean, it was covered in trees, also it was smaller, but it's still crazy to think that they decided to cut that shipwreck. Imagine how prophetic this would have seemed in the future. Look at it, it looks so similar to a modern day shipwreck. Anyway, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video, because I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Actually, there's a real chance that even more gets discovered in the not too distant future, right? There are so many millions of files that still need to be looked at. But thank you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.